I pawned Grandpa's watch. I needed 15 grand to cover my poker debt. Those words from my son changed everything I thought I knew about the family I'd raised. I'm Thomas Barrett, 62 years old, and I've lived in the same house in Asheville, North Carolina for 37 years. My wife, Margaret, passed away 4 years ago from ovarian cancer, and since then, the house has felt too big, too quiet. So when my son Mark called 6 months ago saying he'd lost his job and needed a place to stay with his wife Jessica and their 2 kids, I didn't hesitate. Family helps family. That's what my father taught me, and that's what I believed. Mark had always been a bit of a dreamer, jumping from one career to another. But he was my son, my only child. Margaret and I had poured everything into raising him, making sure he had opportunities we never had. Private school, college, helping with his wedding, even co-signing on his first car. We wanted him to have a better life than we did. The house is a modest 3-bedroom on Maple Street. Nothing fancy but solid. My father, William Barrett, helped me with the down payment back in 1988. He was a Korean War veteran, worked construction his whole life after the service, and he saved every penny he could. When Margaret and I were looking for our first home, he handed me an envelope with $12,000 in cash. You build your life on solid ground, he told me. That's what matters. My father died 10 years ago, right before Christmas. Lung cancer, probably from all those years of smoking, lucky strikes, and breathing in construction dust. In his final weeks at the VA hospital, he gave me his pocket watch. It was a gold Waltham from 1952, the year he came back from Korea. His own father had given it to him when he enlisted, and now he was passing it to me. "Tommy," he said, his voice weak but firm, "this watch has been with me through hell and back. It's more than just telling time. You keep it safe. You hear me? When things get tough, you remember where you come from." I kept that watch in a wooden box on my dresser, right next to Margaret's photograph. Every morning, I'd wind it up, listen to its steady tick, and feel connected to my father. It was the only thing I had left of him besides memories. When Mark and his family moved in, I gave them the master bedroom. It was only right. They needed space for the kids, Ethan, who was 12, and Lily, who was 9. I moved into the smaller guest room. I didn't mind. The kids were good children, or so I thought at first. Jessica seemed nice enough, always thanking me for letting them stay, promising it would only be temporary. "Just until Mark gets back on his feet," she said. "We're so grateful, Thomas. Really." The first month was okay. Mark sent out resumes, went to a few interviews. The kids went to school, did their homework at the kitchen table. I'd make dinner most nights. Pot roast, spaghetti, chicken and dumplings. Margaret's recipes. It felt good to cook for a family again. But then things started to change. Small things at first. Mark stopped looking for work as aggressively. He'd sleep until 10, then sit on the couch watching sports or playing on his phone. When I asked about job applications, he'd get defensive. "The market's tough, Dad. It's not like when you were working. Everything's different now." Jessica started making comments about the house, how the kitchen was outdated, how the bathroom needed remodeling, how my furniture was so 1990s. She'd scroll through Pinterest showing me modern designs, hinting that maybe I should upgrade things. "I mean, you're retired now, Thomas," she said one evening. "You've got the time, and it would increase the property value." I'd smile and nod, but inside I was thinking, I'm 72 years old and living on a fixed income. I'm not renovating my house. Then came the requests for money. First, it was $100 here and there. School supplies for the kids. Jessica needed new work clothes for interviews she was supposedly going to. I'd give it to them because, well, they were family. But the amounts got bigger. $500 for a car repair, $1,000 for credit card bills. "We'll pay you back when Mark gets his signing bonus," Jessica promised. But Mark never seemed to actually land any of these jobs he interviewed for. 3 months in, I noticed my groceries disappearing faster than they should. Not just meals, but the good steaks I'd bought for a special occasion. The expensive coffee I treated myself to. When I mentioned it, Mark laughed it off. "We're all family here, Dad. What's yours is ours, right?" That didn't sit right with me, but I didn't push it. Margaret always said I was too soft. especially with Mark. One Thursday morning in October, I had a dentist appointment. Just a routine cleaning, in and out in an hour. When I came home, I went to my room to put away my jacket, and something felt off. The wooden box on my dresser was open. My father's pocket watch was gone. My heart started racing. I checked the box again, thinking maybe I'd moved it. I looked in my drawers, under the bed, in the closet. Nothing. I tore apart that room like a madman, but the watch was nowhere. I found Mark in the living room, watching a basketball game. "Mark, have you seen Grandpa's watch?" He didn't even look at me. "What watch?" "The gold pocket watch. The one from the wooden box on my dresser. It's gone." He shrugged. "No idea. Maybe you misplaced it." "I don't misplace things like that. It's been in the same spot for 10 years. Jessica came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "Thomas, are you sure you didn't move it somewhere safe? Maybe you forgot." The way she said it, like I was some senile old man who couldn't remember where I put things, made my blood boil. I know exactly where I kept it. That watch was my father's. It's irreplaceable. Mark finally looked at me then, and something in his expression made my stomach drop. Guilt. Just a flash of it before he looked away. "Mark," my voice came out harder than I intended. "Do you know where the watch is?" He was quiet for a long moment. Jessica had gone very still, her eyes darting between us. "I needed to borrow some money," Mark finally said. "What?" "I pawned it. Just temporarily. I'll get it back." The room started spinning. "You pawned your grandfather's watch?" "I needed the money, Dad. I had some debts to pay off." "What kind of debts? You don't have a job." "What debts could you possibly present?" "Poker," Jessica said quietly. "He's been playing online poker." Mark shot her a look, but she kept going. "For months. He's down $15,000. I couldn't breathe. $15,000 on poker. And he'd stolen my father's watch to cover his gambling debts." "You had no right," I said, my voice shaking. "That watch was not yours to take." "Come on, Dad. It's just a watch. It was sitting in a box, collecting dust. At least I'm using it to solve a real problem. Just a watch. My father's watch. The man who'd served his country, who'd worked himself to death to provide for his family, who'd helped me buy this very house. Just a watch." "Get it back," I said. "Right now. I don't care how you do it, but you get that watch back today." Mark stood up, and I realized how tall he'd gotten. He had 6 inches on me now, and at least 60 pounds. "I can't get it back today. I don't have the money." "That's the whole point. Then you find a way to get the money." "From where?" "You gonna give it to me?" The audacity of it took my breath away. He steals from me, and then expects me to pay to fix his mess. "I want you out of my house," I said. Jessica gasped. Mark's face hardened. "You're kicking us out? Your own grandchildren? You stole from me. You violated my trust. This isn't about... This is your house, huh?" Mark's voice had turned cold. "Funny. Pretty sure your name isn't the only one on the deed anymore." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" He smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "Remember when you had that health scare last year? The kidney stones? You were in so much pain, barely coherent. I helped you with some paperwork. Got you to sign a few things." "What things?" "I had you add my name to the deed. Joint tenancy with right of survivorship. This house is as much mine as it is yours now, Dad." The room tilted. That paperwork. I remembered being in agony. Mark bringing me documents, saying it was just to make sure everything was in order in case something happened. I'd been so out of it. I'd signed whatever he put in front of me. "You can't kick me out of my own house," Mark continued. "In fact, Jessica and I have been thinking. This place is too small for all of us. You should really consider moving into a senior living community. They have great places with activities and everything. Much better than living alone. This is my home. It's our home now. And honestly, Dad, you're getting older. It's not safe for you to be here alone. What if you fall? What if you have another health issue? You should be somewhere with medical staff on site." They'd planned this. Somehow, over these months, they'd planned to take my house from me. "I want that deed changed back," I said. "Can't do that without my signature," Mark said. and I'm not signing anything. Over the next few days, things got worse. Mark and Jessica started acting like they owned the place. They'd have friends over late at night, music blaring. When I asked them to quiet down, they'd ignore me. Jessica started going through my mail, opening bills and bank statements. When I confronted her, she said she was just trying to help manage the finances. They moved their stuff into different rooms, spreading out. Mark set up a gaming computer in what used to be my home office. Jessica took over the garage for her online boutique business, filling it with boxes of cheap clothes she was trying to resell. I called the pawn shop where Mark had taken the watch, Lucky Lou's on Patton Avenue. The owner, a gruff man named Lou Castellano, confirmed they had it. Gold Waltham, 1,952. Beautiful piece. Your son pawned it for 15 grand. You want it back? That's what it'll cost you, plus interest. Comes out to $16,500. $16,500. I didn't have that kind of money. My retirement savings were modest. Social Security covered my bills with not much left over. Can I at least see it? I asked. Sure, come on by. I drove to the pawn shop the next day. Lou brought out the watch, and just seeing it made my throat tight. It looked exactly as I remembered. The gold case, slightly worn from years of my father's hands. The inscription on the back, to William, with pride. Dad, 1,952. Beautiful craftsmanship, Lou said. They don't make them like this anymore. I held it, felt its weight in my palm. My father's hands had held this same watch, had looked at it in foxholes in Korea, waiting for orders, had checked it every morning before heading to construction sites, had held it on his deathbed when he gave it to me. Sir, are you all right? I realized I was crying. This was my father's. My son had no right. Lou's expression softened. I'm sorry. I see this kind of thing more than you'd think. Family members pawning things that aren't theirs. If it helps, I'll hold on to it as long as I can before selling it. Give you time to get the money together. Thank you. Back home, I tried to reason with Mark one more time. I found him in the living room, beer in hand, watching television. Mark, please. That watch means everything to me. There has to be a way we can work this out. You got 16 grand lying around? You know I don't. Then I guess it's gone. Maybe you should have thought about that before threatening to kick me out. I'll go to the police. Report it stolen. Mark laughed. Good luck with that. I live here. You gave me access to everything. How are you going to prove I didn't have permission? Plus, you really want to send your only son to jail? What would Mom think? Bringing up Margaret was a low blow. He knew it. Your mother would be ashamed of what you've become. His face darkened. Get out of my sight, old man. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small room, listening to Mark and Jessica laughing in the master bedroom, and wondered how it had come to this. How had I raised a son who could do this to me? The next morning, I got up early and went to my woodworking shop in the basement. It was my sanctuary, where I'd spent countless hours building furniture, birdhouses, little projects to keep my hands busy after Margaret died. I had a radio down there, my tools all organized, sawdust on the floor that smelled like pine and oak. I was working on a jewelry box for a friend when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Jessica appeared. Thomas, we need to talk about this space. What about it? Mark and I were thinking this would make a great home gym. You know, with his bad back, he really needs to exercise more. We could get a treadmill, some weights. I stared at her. This is my workshop. You barely use it anymore. And honestly, all these tools, they're dangerous. What if one of the kids came down here and got hurt? We really should box all this up, put it in storage. Get out. Excuse me? Get out of my workshop. This is mine. This is the one space in this house that's still mine. And you're not taking it. She crossed her arms. This is what I'm talking about, Thomas. You're becoming hostile, aggressive. These are signs of cognitive decline. Mark and I have been researching senior care facilities, and we really think... I said get out. She backed up the stairs, and I heard her calling for Mark. He's yelling at me. I told you he's getting worse. I locked the workshop door and sat on my stool, hands shaking. They were gaslighting me, making me out to be the problem. The crazy old man who needed to be institutionalized so they could have the house to themselves. Over the next week, the situation escalated. They started eating all the food I bought without replacing it. When I'd come home from the grocery store, Mark would go through the bags and take what he wanted up to their room. I'd find the refrigerator empty, except for condiments. They disconnected the cable to my bedroom, saying they needed it for their room instead. When I protested, Mark said I watched too much TV anyway, that it wasn't good for me. Jessica started bringing people over to look at the house. Real estate agents. She told them I was moving to assisted living and the house would be available soon. When I confronted her, she smiled sweetly. "We're just getting prepared, Thomas. You know, for when the time comes. I'm not going anywhere. We'll see." I called a lawyer, explained the situation with the deed. He reviewed the paperwork and shook his head. "I'm sorry, Mr. Barrett. The deed transfer is legal. You signed it, it was notarized, and it's been recorded. Undoing it would require your son's cooperation, which it sounds like you won't get." But I was under duress. I was in pain, barely aware of what I was signing. That's very difficult to prove, especially after this much time has passed. "Do you have any evidence that you were coerced or incompetent at the time of signing?" I didn't. It had been just me and Mark in the hospital room. "What about the watch?" He stole my father's watch. "Did you give him access to your room?" "Well, yes, but did you ever explicitly tell him the watch was off limits?" It should be obvious that I understand, Mr. Barrett, but from a legal standpoint, proving theft in a family situation where access was granted is extremely difficult. It becomes a he said, she said situation. I left the lawyer's office feeling defeated. They'd outmaneuvered me at every turn. That night, I was in the kitchen making myself a sandwich when Mark came in with two of his friends. Loud guys, smelling like beer and cigarettes. They pushed past me to raid the refrigerator. "Dad, you got any more of that deli turkey? That's for my lunches this week." One of his friends laughed. "Come on, old-timer. Share and share alike, right?" They took the turkey, the cheese, the bread I'd just bought. Left me with nothing. "Mark, this has to stop. This is my food. My house." "Our house?" he corrected. "And what are you going to do about it? Huh?" He stepped closer to me, and I realized how vulnerable I was. One push and I could fall, break a hip, end up in the hospital. That's probably what they wanted. I went to my room and locked the door. Sat on the edge of the bed and looked at Margaret's photograph. "I don't know what to do," I whispered to her image. "I don't know how to fix this." The next day, I went back to Lucky Lou's. I needed to see the watch again, even if I couldn't afford to buy it back. Maybe just holding it would help me think clearly. Lou brought it out, and I examined it more closely this time. Turned it over, looked at the inscription, opened the case to see the movement inside. The mechanics were beautiful, all those tiny gears working together in perfect harmony. And that's when I noticed it. A tiny gap between the inner case and the outer case. A seam I'd never seen before. "Lou, does this open further?" He leaned in, pulled out a magnifying glass. "Huh, looks like it might. Let me get my tools." He worked at it gently with a small pick, and after a few minutes, the inner case popped free. Hidden behind it, in a tiny compartment I never knew existed, was a folded piece of paper. My hands shook as I unfolded it. The paper was yellowed, fragile. The handwriting was my father's. "Tommy," it read, "if you're reading this, someone tried to take what's yours. I put this here the day before I gave you the watch, because I know how people can be, even family, especially family sometimes. I learned that the hard way. Your brother tried to cut me out of my own father's will. You never knew that. I never told you. But when Grandpa died, your Uncle Frank came at me with lawyers, tried to say I'd coerced the old man into leaving me the construction business. It was a lie, but it nearly worked. I learned then that blood doesn't always mean loyalty. I'm writing this because I want you to remember something. You're stronger than you think. You came from good stock. Your mother and I raised you right. Don't let anyone make you feel small. Don't let anyone take what's yours without a fight. This watch has been through a war. It survived things you can't imagine. It's still ticking because it was built to last. Just like you, Stand up for yourself, son. I know you've got it in you. You're a Barrett, and we don't quit. I love you, and I'm proud of you. Dad, I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Lou discreetly stepped away, giving me privacy. My father had known. Somehow, he'd known this might happen, and he'd left me this message, hidden for me to find when I needed it most. I carefully folded the letter and put it in my wallet. Lou, I need 2 weeks. Can you give me 2 weeks to get the money? For you? Yeah. I can hold it 2 weeks. I left the pawn shop with a new determination. My father was right. I was stronger than this. I wasn't going to let Mark and Jessica steal my life from me. First, I went to a different lawyer, one who specialized in elder law. I explained everything: the deed transfer, the coercion, Mark's gambling, the stolen watch, their attempts to push me into assisted living. The lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chen, listened carefully and took notes. Mr. Barrett, what they're doing is called elder financial abuse. It's a crime in North Carolina. And the fact that your son added his name to your deed while you were incapacitated could potentially be grounds for undue influence. But the other lawyer said, the other lawyer probably doesn't specialize in this area. Let me make some calls. Review the paperwork. I think we have options. She also suggested I document everything. Keep a journal of incidents. Install cameras in my own home to record their behavior. Cameras? Yes. They're your tenants now, technically. So you're allowed to have security cameras in common areas. Just not in their private spaces like bedrooms and bathrooms. I went to Best Buy that afternoon and bought 2 hidden cameras. One that looked like a smoke detector, one that looked like a phone charger. I installed them in the living room and kitchen. Over the next week, those cameras captured everything. Mark and Jessica going through my mail. Mark taking money from my wallet when he thought I wasn't looking. Jessica bringing real estate agents through the house and telling them I had dementia. Mark shoving me when I asked him to clean up after himself in the kitchen. That last one was the clincher. I had video evidence of my son committing assault. Patricia filed multiple motions. First, a petition to invalidate the deed transfer based on undue influence. Second, a restraining order based on the assault captured on video. Third, a police report about the stolen watch. When the sheriff showed up to serve Mark with the restraining order, I watched from my workshop window. Mark's face went from confident to shocked to furious in about 10 seconds. Jessica came down to the workshop, pounding on the door. What did you do? What did you tell them? I didn't answer. Just kept sanding the jewelry box I was working on. The court hearing was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, the restraining order required Mark to stay at least 500 feet away from me. That meant he had to leave the house. Jessica and the kids could stay, but she had to ensure Mark didn't come back. For the first time in months, I had some peace. Jessica was quiet, subdued. The kids asked where their dad was, and she told them he was staying with friends for a while. I used that time to gather more evidence. Bank statements showing Mark had been accessing my accounts. Emails between him and Jessica discussing their plans to eventually sell the house and keep the proceeds. Text messages where Mark joked about inheriting early. Patricia was building an ironclad case. The hearing arrived. Mark showed up with his own lawyer, a slick guy in an expensive suit who clearly thought this would be easy. It wasn't. Patricia presented the evidence methodically. The video of Mark assaulting me. The medical records from my kidney stone incident showing I'd been on heavy pain medication when I signed the deed transfer. Testimony from my doctor about my cognitive state at the time. The emails and texts showing premeditation. Mark's lawyer tried to argue that I was a bitter old man making things up, that Mark was just trying to help his aging father. Then Patricia played the video of Mark shoving me. The judge's expression hardened. Mr. Barrett, the judge said to Mark, you want to explain to me why you thought it was appropriate to put your hands on your father? Mark stammered something about me being in his way, about it being an accident. The judge wasn't buying it. In the end, the ruling was swift. The deed transfer was invalidated due to undue influence and lack of informed consent. Mark was ordered to sign the house back over to me within 30 days, or face contempt charges. The restraining order was extended to 1 year, and the judge referred the case to the DA for potential criminal charges of elder abuse. Regarding the watch, that was trickier. But Patricia had a solution. She filed a civil suit against Mark for the return of stolen property or its monetary value. With all the other evidence against him, Mark's lawyer advised him to settle. Mark agreed to pay the $16,500 to get the watch out of pawn. He had 30 days to come up with the money. Jessica was given 30 days to vacate the premises with the children. The judge noted that while I had every right to keep my home, he encouraged me to maintain a relationship with my grandchildren if possible. I did feel bad about Ethan and Lily. None of this was their fault. I told Jessica they could visit any time she wanted, as long as Mark wasn't involved. She just gave me a cold look. "You're going to regret this." "I already regret trusting your husband." They moved out on day 29, took their stuff, and left. Didn't clean, didn't say goodbye, just gone. The house was a mess. They damaged walls, stained carpets, left trash everywhere. But it was mine again. Mark came up with the money. I suspected his parents-in-law helped him. And I went to Lucky Lou's to retrieve my father's watch. Lou smiled when I walked in. "Glad to see you got it sorted out." "Me too." He handed me the watch, and I held it like I was holding my father's hand. That night, I sat in my workshop, the watch in front of me, my father's letter beside it. I read the letter again. "You're a Barrett, and we don't quit." I hadn't quit. I'd fought back, and I'd won. It's been 6 months now. I've got the house to myself, exactly as it should be. I renovated the master bedroom, made it mine again. Painted it the color Margaret always wanted, a soft sage green. Put up new curtains, got a comfortable chair by the window. My workshop is my sanctuary again. I've been taking on custom orders, making furniture for people who appreciate craftsmanship. It keeps me busy, keeps my mind sharp. Ethan and Lily come over every other weekend. Jessica drops them off and picks them up. We don't speak beyond the necessary pleasantries. The kids don't talk about their dad much, and I don't ask. I just try to be a good grandfather. Make them meals, help with homework, teach Ethan some basic woodworking. Mark hasn't tried to contact me. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Jessica moved to Tennessee, that he's working in sales somewhere. I hope he's getting help for his gambling problem, for his sake and his family's sake. But that's not my responsibility anymore. Every morning, I wind my father's watch. Listen to its steady tick. Remember what he wrote. "This watch has been through a war. It's survived things you can't imagine. It's still ticking because it was built to last." Just like me, I learned something through all of this. Family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, trust, and boundaries. It's about standing up for yourself when someone crosses a line, even if that someone is your own child. My father knew that. That's why he left me that letter. He'd been through it himself with his own brother. He wanted me to be prepared, to be strong. And when the moment came, when I found that letter, it gave me exactly what I needed, the strength to fight back. People ask me if I regret going to court against my own son. The honest answer is no. I regret that it came to that. I regret that Mark became someone who would steal from me and try to manipulate me. But I don't regret protecting myself. You can't let people walk all over you, even family. Especially family, sometimes. I think about Margaret often, wonder what she'd think of all this. She always said I was too soft with Mark, that I let him get away with too much when he was growing up. Maybe she was right. Maybe I enabled this behavior by always being the easy parent, always giving in. But I'm not that person anymore. I've learned to set boundaries, to say no, to fight for what's mine. And every time I look at my father's watch, I remember that I'm stronger than I thought. That I come from people who survived wars and hardships and betrayals. That I'm built to last. My name is Thomas Barrett. I'm 62 years old. I live in my own house, on my own terms. I have my father's watch, my mother's wedding ring, my wife's photographs. I have my memories and my dignity. And nobody's taking those from me ever again.